Hey guys, what's going on? Paul here. Welcome back to another Cardano video. Today we're talking to Sebastien from Paima Studios. They have been doing something a little bit different in the gaming side. So Sebastien, it's great to have you back on the channel. We will get into everything that you're doing here, and thanks for taking the time to come on again.
Yeah, likewise. As you may have seen, Paima Engine, which is the product by Paima Studios, has the first game using it released, which is called Jungle Wars. And the game is free to play. You don't need to buy an NFT. You don't need to have a token to play the game. The focus of this first game was to build a proof of concept, show people what's possible with our new Layer 2 solution. And I'm sure we'll get more into the details in this call. But what is this Layer 2 solution? What is Paima Engine? Why is it so novel? And why do we think this proof of concept is so meaningful?
Yeah, great. Yeah, you laid it out there exactly what I want to know. So it's different than what we've seen before. It's all or most of it seems to be on chain. I have shown the video in one of my recent videos, and I'll put it up on screen here actually afterwards for people to see it. And links will be down below for anyone that wants to check it out. It is over on Milkomeda at the minute. Do you want to talk about what it is? So you mentioned a lot there about it's built on the Paima engine. And this is just the first game that's built on that engine. This was, as you said, the proof of concept.
Yeah. So first, we have to kind of take a step back and look at the Web3 industry and blockchain industry and see where it's at to understand why we built this and why we thought there's such a need. So clearly, there's been a huge amount of effort put into scalability of blockchains and flexibility of blockchains. It used to be, if you look at the blockchain space a few years ago, you had to use, for example, Solidity and put it on the Ethereum blockchain, and then you were bound by whatever limitations Solidity has a programming language and the throughput limitations of the Ethereum blockchain, both of which are not very good. Solidity is not a super easy to use language, and then Ethereum blockchain is also not super scalable. And so there's a lot of thought about, well, how can we improve the EVM and how can we get it faster? And out of that came a bunch of new blockchains. And the core value proposition of these blockchains was, unlike with Ethereum, we have these different properties, these different mechanisms, these different programming languages to try and make the user experience better and take different trade-offs. And there's definitely been a lot of projects that had a lot of success in that. For example, Cardano has built a very unique, community with very unique trade-offs and a whole set of benefits to it. But there's some projects that did not necessarily want to build a whole community from scratch. They wanted to maintain presence inside the Ethereum community. And so that's been this whole growth of the layer 2 space, which is projects that want to inherit the security of Ethereum, inherit the user base of Ethereum, but still want to experiment with new virtual machines, with new programming languages, with new trade-offs. And so there's been quite a lot of these layer 2 projects. You might have heard them, for example, Optimism, Arbitrum, ZK Sync, and some companies like Starkware. These are large projects that have built layer 2s for Ethereum, and some of them introduce new programming languages. Some of them are more about scalability. But one thing all these projects have in common is that they're all focused on DeFi as their primary problem they're solving. And what do I mean by that? The core value propositions of these layer 2s is you put money in. For example, you put in 5 ETH into the system, you trade on some dexes, you interact with some lending protocols, whatever you want to do, and later on in the future, you can maybe take 10 ETH out. And there needs to be some kind of proof that the money you put in, it really still belongs to you, and that you really made 5 ETH, and you're not just stealing money from the system. And the question of, how can we get these, safe proofs that you really did have 10 ETH to put out, all this kind of cryptography is somewhat unrelated to the concept of a layer 2. So the concept of layer 2 is just how do we inherit security, how we build systems on top of existing systems, how we stack, layers together. And that's, in a sense, separate from, well, okay, how do we prove this property of, put in 5 ETH, take 10 ETH out? And when we're thinking about building games, for example, a lot of games don't actually care about this property of putting money into the game and taking money out. Like, when was the last time you played a video game where you pay for the game and then you later on you're pressing a withdraw button in the game to get a bank deposit? It doesn't really happen. There's definitely some games that do it. Usually they're more lottery kind of games, but in general, this is not something game developers necessarily want, and a lot of game developers feel kind of awkward about putting this kind of system into their game, especially for MMOs where oftentimes this kind of feature, if not designed well, can lead to some issues. So we thought there's quite a lot of design space possible around layer 2 solutions that are not focused on DeFi, but rather focused on more classical Web3 applications, and especially games in particular. So that's kind of the background for Paima Engine, which is this new layer 2 solution. We're calling it a Web3 engine that we've built that is not, instead of being like hyper focused on DeFi, is instead focused on how do we build, really efficient games, really flexible games, and really flexible Web3 applications to unlock that entire whole other set of blockchain use cases that have historically been kind of underserved.
Okay, so lots to unpack there. Would you refer to it there as a layer 2 solution, and is it a layer 2 on its own, or does it always interact with, at the minute when I played the game, it was over on Milkomeda. I think you have plans to make it playable on other chains as well, but is it a layer 2 on its own, or is it, say, an add-on to another sidechain or layer 2? How does that work?
Yeah, so currently it's a layer 2 on top of Milkomeda C1, which is the EVM sidechain for Cardano. We do have plans to connect it more closely with Cardano. Notably, we're planning to leverage features like wrapped smart contracts so that you can play the game directly from your Cardano wallet. We have plans for like gaming accounts in Cardano, so that the current ways that wallets are set up, like if you use Flint, Nami Eternal, these wallets are currently set up also for like DeFi-ish use cases, not necessarily for gaming use cases. So we're going to be creating a SIP for kind of gaming accounts as well to try and make this process smoother. And we'll be making a lot of changes to Flint wallet as well to try and build out a user experience that enables Cardano users to really access gaming use cases. This is not necessarily just for Cardano. We have a plan to obviously scale this up because Paima Engine in itself can deploy to other blockchains as well. We're just starting with the Cardano ecosystem.
Okay. And what we've seen, or what I've seen anyway, from games that are looking to talk about being blockchain games before this, it's generally there's NFTs and they're your in-game characters, and that's how blockchain is integrated to the games. But with what I've seen from you guys, it's very different what you have. You can use your NFT, you don't have to use it. But every move, when I was making a move in the game, I had to confirm it with my MetaMask because it was over on Milkomeda. But is that going to be the way going forward, that every move within the game has to be confirmed through your wallet? It's recorded as a transaction on the network then? Is that the plan moving forward?
Yeah, so to really explain that, let me take a step back and explain what is the core value proposition of the Paima engine. What does it do that you couldn't do before? So historically, one thing people really want for games is having NFTs that level up, that have equipment, have items. And historically, this is really hard to do in a smart contract. Like if you imagine doing this in Solidity, there's like, some ways to do it that don't work really well. There's some options doing this. In Plutus is even harder. So both these options are not really good. And people have spent a lot of time trying to, build these games using kind of these native technologies, but it's just too hard for a lot of, large games to really take off using purely Web3. So what a lot of games do instead is they build a totally off-chain game, like a Web 2 game, and then connect NFTs to it. And so this is kind of like a Web 2.5 model, where the game is Web 2, but they attach some NFTs, so there's some Web 3 components to it. And the difficulty with this is that it becomes really hard to drive value to in-game assets. Like if you think about especially MMOs, like why do people play MMORPGs? Because they want to level up their character, they want to accrue state into their account, finish quests, have that, recorded. And so there's a real drive to, accrue state in your accounts. And NFTs are a great way to represent this because you can have a picture that, changes and stores all your in-game state. And so what Paima Engine is at its core, it's an NFT kind of data association engine, and we call these stateful NFTs. So they're NFTs that can be associated with arbitrary states that evolves over time, and it allows, for example, for like a game like Pokemon, where your stateful NFT is a Pokeball, and when you catch a Pokemon, the Pokemon is kind of attached to that Pokeball NFT, and then its health point, its move set, all this kind of information is attached all to stateful NFT, and so it allows you to have much more flexible, state of your game represented on chain which can be connected to NFT marketplaces and all the other parts of Web3, while also inheriting all the security of the, for example, Cardano ecosystem or other chains in the future, so that you don't lose the security of Web3, you don't lose the composability of Web3, but you gain all this new extra flexibility and expressiveness.
Okay,
So,
so sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I forgot to kind of tie into part of your question, which is what about the transaction fees?
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that's hard to do this historically is that people really struggle with transaction fees, not just transaction fees, but also like upgrading the smart contract. Like if oftentimes when you're writing a game, you're like, oh, I want to add a new item. How do I add the new item to my game? This kind of upgradability system is also very hard. So these are the problems we're solving for in Paima Engine to handle all this for you, so you don't have to really think about it. Most of the times when you upgrade your game, you won't need a smart contract upgrade. It'll be fairly smooth, and you won't have any of the limitations of EM. You can be able to attach arbitrary states, and there are transaction fees when the game is played. Like for example, in Jungle Wars, our first game, you will have to pay transaction fees when you interact with the game state. However, as you've probably noticed, the transaction fees are very small. And this is one of the benefits of layer 2 solutions, which is that they can provide significantly lower transaction fees than doing this natively on the layer 1. And so because they're so low, it really allows for game developers to pay on behalf of users if they want to. So for example, a game of Jungle Wars takes half a cent per round. So it's very cheap. And so what we can say is, if you're a game developer, you know how much each user really brings to the game. So you can say, okay, every user gets 5 moves for free per day, or whatever mechanism you want. And something that we are planning to provide also is a way to set up so that if somebody's delegating to a stake pool, they get free moves every day. And notably, we want to use this as a way to encourage small stake pool ownership as well. To say, like, if you're delegating to a small stake pool in Cardano, you get some extra free moves to encourage people to delegate their ADA across a larger set of pools.
Okay, yeah, that's a very interesting way actually to encourage that, help decentralization as well, and that incentivize people. And when it comes to, when you say that about delegating to Cardano pools, is that when it comes over to Cardano, then how will, like, our transaction fees on Cardano are a lot higher than, they're still not expensive, but they're a lot higher than they are on Milkomeda. So how would that work over on Cardano? Is it still going to be that every round you confirm your transaction on the network as well?
Yeah, so there's 2 parts of this. So one of them is how we do it base level, and how do we make this scale. So at a base level, this will work with message signing. So as you may know, in Cardano, there's a message signing standard that we wrote a long time ago called SIP8. Sorry, and allows you to sign data with your private key to make sure that, to prove that you own this address. And so we're going to be leveraging this to be able to sign moves that you want to happen on Milkomeda, so that this is how you can interact with the whole game ecosystem without ever having to leave your Cardano wallet. And the great thing about this system is that it means that it'll work with Flint, it'll work with Nami, it'll work with Eternal. All Cardano wallets automatically will support the whole Milkomeda ecosystem, so you can play any game without ever leaving your Cardano wallet. Now, obviously, this helps with a transaction fee system because somebody else paying for the fee or just signing messages. What it doesn't help with quite yet is reducing the number of prompts to the user. And this is why we're going to be creating this gaming account standard to try and figure out ways to give permission to the game itself to sign messages on your behalf through the game's state, so that if you trust the game you're playing, you can say, oh yeah, just like sign messages as long as they belong to this game. And we're going to set up a whole standard to make sure that's secure within that model.
That'll be a great feature. It was something I was kind of thinking when I was trying the game, was it would be great if I could sign a message at the start of the game, and then it counted for the 3 rounds, then that the game could actually just confirm the transaction for me. So bringing something like that in would really encourage more people to get involved in it as well. And I suppose Jungle Wars is just your proof of concept. There is another game in the works as well that I seen on Twitter. I seen a very quick video of it. I'll put that up here as well afterwards. So how are things changing going into that? It looks to be a different style of the game as well.
Yeah, so our strategy for Paima Studios is to have the engine usable by anybody. So if anybody wants to create their own application, their own game, they can use Paima Engine and build a game they've always wanted to build. And so we have a few companies that are reaching out to us to build games using the Paima Engine. But at the same time, we also want to build games ourselves to show what is possible with the Paima Engine, to build examples, and also to get users to start experimenting with Paima Engine and grow to love it as its own product. And so we've already released Jungle Wars, which is our first proof of concept. It shows you that it really is possible to build cheap, on-chain games with NFTs that really evolve over time. Because for Jungle Wars, your wins, your losses, your characters that you've unlocked are all attached to your NFT. And so going forward, we're going to have other games that we're going to be developing ourselves that show off different features of the engine. That way, if you're a developer and you want to, build a game with Paima Engine, you'll have a few different examples of games to get a good idea of how it all works, how you can create a game similarly, and what really is possible.
Okay, and how much of the game has to be on chain versus off chain? What we talked about, you referred to it as, I suppose, Web 2.5, where basically the game is all offline and then you just have the NFT as an add on to it. But with Paima Studios, how much will be on chain versus off chain, or can the developers building the games decide how much they put on and off?
Yeah, so it's up to the developers. So what Paima Engine allows you to do from a developer perspective, so we abstract away all the blockchain stuff, so you don't really have to think about blockchain when you're developing this, because we want traditional game developers to be able to, come into the ecosystem, build a game without really having to learn much about blockchain, and just have Paima Engine take care of most of it. And so as you're building your game with a Paima Engine, all you have to do is specify which parts of your game need to be synchronized to the blockchain, and the Paima Engine will take care of the rest. So if you want to have your whole game run on chain, then you could just annotate your game code to have it that way. If you want to, for whatever reason, have part of your game run off chain, that's also entirely supported as well. So for our games, for Jungle Wars, for example, it's all the game state is all stored on chain. But if some game developer for some reason want to have some non-on-chain part, most notably the main use case for this is games where you have like smooth character movement, like you hold down the up arrow to like move your character forward at a constant speed. And that's not really something you can support on chain because it's continuous movement. And so for these kinds of use cases, it's up to the game developer to decide how they want to synchronize this.
Okay, so they could have like save points every, I don't know, however often they want to do it, and that's all saved on
Yeah,
chain. But yeah.
yeah, and I think a good example of this is like if you were to try and build like Minecraft on chain, you could decide to try and like every time the user moves their character, like every time they press the arrow key, try and sync that with the blockchain. But it's not really necessary. All you really want is like which items do they have, which blocks have they destroyed, which blocks have they placed. Like that's the core set of things you want to agree on, that you want consensus on. And so you would implement that part on chain, and then the character movement, you'd have that off chain. Obviously, it comes with the downside, which is that there's no way to come to an agreement about which characters were in the game state. But that's not really big of an issue. Like even in the real Minecraft itself, like people have hacked clients that allow them to fly around, and it's up to admins to manage that however they want. So
Yeah.
I think this is a pretty reasonable trade-off, and shows how there's some cases where as a game developer you'll want to synchronize some stuff on chain, and Paima Engine will help you do all that without really having to think about it. And then the off chain state, you can handle that how you want.
Okay, so I suppose for now it's more tailored towards strategy games. Could be more of that could be put on chain than say open world games, where say shooter games, first person shooters or stuff like that. You would have less of that kind of stuff on chain, but you still could have the
Yeah.
upgrades or the weapons that you have or stuff like that. That stuff could still be saved back to the chain?
Yeah. So, our goal is to make it that, if you want to store it on chain, Paima Engine will have all the features required to have that be a great user experience and have low transaction fees and have that all supported. But obviously it's up to the game developers at the end of the day what they want to prefer. Notably, one other key thing I want to mention is that this layer 2 is non-custodial. And what I mean by that is that one of the big fears of layer 2 systems is what if they get hacked? Like if Optimism has a bug in it, then you're looking at like potentially hundreds of millions of dollars getting hacked. And so this is like a concern for people who get into layer 2s on Ethereum. Paima is a non-custodial layer 2 solution, so the NFT you have never leaves your wallet. So there's no way, even if the game gets hacked, the game servers get hacked or whatever, there's no way for the game to steal your NFT unless you explicitly approve a transaction that allows it to steal. So there's very little risk to playing any Paima game. What it does mean is that there's some use cases where the game developer wants to stop you from transferring or wants to have some extra limitations on top of the assets, so it's not purely non-custodial. And we support stuff like soul-bound tokens and these other kinds of mechanisms as well. So it's up to you as a game developer to also choose how much freedom you want to give to the developer, or sorry, how much freedom you want to give to the player, and how much freedom you want to keep in the game. So if you want to allow people to freely trade assets on NFT marketplaces and trade their in-game assets, you can do that. If you want to create a game where some items inside the game are soul-bound and the user can't trade them on marketplaces, that's also something that you can do.
Okay, so yeah, I think gaming really can be a great way to onboard people into blockchain. But I think we need to not target people that are in crypto and say, you're in crypto, this is a blockchain game, so you should play it. We need to be able to target the gaming industry and target the bigger markets that are out there and bring them on, and kind of games within crypto can be your onboarding tool. They can teach people how to actually use blockchain. They don't need to know it's blockchain in the beginning, but as they want to do more, that's when the games can essentially teach them to do that. But we need to build games, which is not easy to do, that can compete with some of the big industry ones that's out there. But where do you see blockchain gaming going in the future, over not even the next few months, the next few years? I suppose it's a longer time frame.
Yeah, so one thing that's really interesting about Paima engine is that it allows to build games that really have on-chain state, that you can really accrue state in your NFT, and really takes the NFT ecosystem to the next level. There's been a lot of projects that wanted to get into gaming, but because of technical limitations, there hasn't been as many NFT-based games as projects would like. And so I think this kind of project will really enable us to get to the next level and have really flexible and stateful NFTs. However, there's kind of a next step after that, which is there are some games that do care about this kind of like 5 ether and 10 ether out property. Although most games don't care about it, there definitely are games that do. And so we do have plans to kind of add a ZK layer on top of Paima, so that games that want to have this opportunity to have some kind of put money in, take money out system can really have this functionality. And if they want to provide distinct proofs of game state, this is also something that we'll support. So this is kind of our long-term roadmap. And I think a lot of other people in the industry are very much looking at this ZK approach. What I think they are missing is that a lot of the ZK-based games are now, they don't have any support for stateful NFTs. And so although these ZK systems that they build, ZK, by the way, zero knowledge, if these ZK systems that they build, although interesting from kind of like a financial perspective, tends to miss out on the expressiveness and statefulness of NFTs. So we think that we're in a really good position to, bring this first, step in the Paima engine, which allows people to have, this really expressive layer 2 solution, and then on top of that, add this kind of zero knowledge cryptography support as a future update.
Okay, and when you do expand out, so you mentioned Cardano, you'll be able to play the games on Cardano. Is there other chains there as well? And with anyone who builds a game using Paima, the Paima engine, can the same game be played across multiple chains? Then someone comes in and they want to pick which chain they want to play on. Can the same game be put across all of them once it's done through Paima?
Yeah, so the idea is that if you want, you can deploy the same game to multiple chains, or you can have the game deployed to kind of a canonical chain and then have other chains, users from other chains kind of have cross-chain gaming. So this is definitely something we're working on. In fact, Cardano is the first instance of that, right? The game lives on Milkomeda C1, and then you call and play the game entirely from Cardano. So it's kind of the first version of that, but obviously we can build that support for other chains as well. So you can play, for example, the game from your Solana wallet, and the game lives in the Cardano ecosystem. So that's definitely something we're looking at. The Paima engine itself will be deployed to other blockchains, notably Algorand, So if you want to have your game live on the Algorand blockchain instead, that's something that we will support.
Okay, and at some point, could we have people on Algorand playing against people on Cardano or against Solana playing within the same
Yep.
game, or would there be we could settle who is the best chain overall? That could be one way to settle it.
Yes, that's definitely something we have on our roadmap.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be good because look, cross chain is going to be or is now it's the future of where we're going. It's you have to be able to move across chains and people coming in new. A lot of people coming in, they don't really care what chain they're on, and there'll be different chains for different activities. But is there anything else that we haven't covered here on what you guys are doing in terms of the gaming side?
Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier, we currently are building our own games, but we're looking for partners as well. So we're hoping to have the engine ready for external partners later this year. So if you're somebody listening to this video and you're like, damn, that sounds awesome, I'd love to build a game or an application, definitely reach out to us on Twitter or any other platform and let us know. We'd love to, work with you. Obviously, as I mentioned, we already have multiple projects that are planning to work with us. So maybe we might not have bandwidth for your project. But we definitely like to hear from you and seeing how we can help you out.
Great. So that's the Paima Studios Twitter. Is that one of the best places? I can put whatever links
Yeah,
down below anyway. That they're the best place to
yeah,
reach
that's
out.
perfect.
So look, thanks very much. I appreciate getting the insight into this. It's something we'll definitely have to catch up on in a few months' time to see where it's going because I think it's a space that will definitely evolve fairly quickly. And as you move to other chains as well, we look at the integrations there. So the links will be down below if you want to get in touch or if you want to go in and play the games as well. Thanks for watching. Comment questions or anything like that down below, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks.